All right, so we're diving into global crypto regulation today, huh? You've given us quite the source to unpack with this video from the Coin Bureau about that Elliptic report, Global Crypto Regulatory Landscape. I mean, it really seems like everybody's got a different take on crypto these days. Let's try to make sense of it all, shall we?
Yeah, it's a real mix right now. I mean, that's to be expected, right? Crypto is still pretty new in the grand scheme of things. You've got some countries rolling out the red carpet, others putting up walls, and then, well, there's the US.
Yeah, talk about a roller coaster. That video does not hold back on the SEC, especially Gary Gensler and their, let's just say, proactive approach to enforcement.
Yeah, they're really going after DeFi. You know, platforms like Uniswap and Consensus, those decentralized exchanges and lending platforms, they're in the SEC's crosshairs.
It's like they're trying to use rules from the Stone Age to regulate something from the future.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. They haven't touched Paxos. Paxos, the company behind Binance USD, that stablecoin. You'd think they'd be all over that.
So are they trying to kill crypto or cultivate it? It's really hard to tell.
It really is. This lack of clear guidelines from the feds, it's a real problem. Companies are left in limbo, stifling innovation. Some are even packing up and heading to friendlier shores. Some states, though, are like, okay, fine, we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah, New York's not messing around with those strict regulations.
True, but hey, at least it's something. Then there's that FIT 21 bill, the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act, making its way through Congress. Now, that could be a game changer. Imagine a clear regulatory framework specifically for digital assets.
So less confusion, more clarity. I like the sound of that.
Right. But of course, there's a catch. The SEC isn't exactly thrilled. Seems like they prefer having that power to interpret laws as they see fit. But here's the thing. The Supreme Court overturning that Chevron doctrine, that could shake things up.
Wait, the what now?
The Chevron doctrine. Basically, it gave regulatory bodies like the SEC a ton of leeway to interpret laws however they wanted. The Supreme Court saying, nope, you have to stick to the letter of the law, that's a big deal. It could significantly impact how much power the SEC really has.
Okay, so big implications there. Seems like the U.S. is still figuring things out, but what about the rest of the world?
It's a real mixed bag, to be honest. Some countries are laying out the welcome mat, others not so much. Canada's keeping it low-key, just sending out reminders for crypto platforms to register.
Sounds about right, nice and polite.
Right. Then you've got Bolivia, which just lifted its crypto ban altogether. Meanwhile, right next door, El Salvador's out there using Bitcoin like it's just another dollar bill. Talk about a study in contrast.
Oh, wow, night and day. So even within the same region, it's all over the map. What about Europe? They're usually pretty organized when it comes to this stuff.
They are, and they're making some big moves. The EU just approved MiCA, the markets in crypto assets. This is huge.
Micah, sounds important, fill us in.
Think of it like the EU's master plan to regulate crypto. They want to create one set of rules for all 27 member states, creating a single market for digital assets. This would make it much easier for crypto businesses to operate across borders. Potentially, it could make the EU the go-to place for crypto. And you know what? Circle, the company behind USDC, just became the first one to get fully authorized under MiCA.
Whoa, so they're putting their money where their mouth is. But there's this travel rule thing I keep hearing about. Sounds a little ominous.
It does, right? But don't worry, it's not about restricting travel or anything. This is coming from the Financial Action Task Force, FATF. They're all about preventing money laundering and terrorist financing. They've basically told crypto businesses, hey, you need to know your customers and keep track of transactions, just like regular banks do.
So more transparency, less anonymity.
Exactly. It's causing a bit of a stir, though, because some people feel it goes against the whole idea of crypto, that be your own bank mentality.
Right, that whole ethos. So the EU is streamlining with MiCA, but the FATF is tightening the reins with the travel rule. What about the UK? Weren't they just going through it with Brexit and all?
They were, but when it comes to crypto, they're actually pretty aligned with the EU, albeit with their own British twist, naturally. They've woven crypto into their existing anti-money laundering laws, so exchanges and those sorts of companies need to register with the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA. And yep, they've got their own version of that travel rule too.
So more KYC, AML, all that jazz.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. The UK has actually given their police the power to seize crypto if it's tied to criminal activity.
Oh, really? They're not playing around.
Nope. And they've already confiscated a good chunk of Bitcoin this way. Talk about sending a message.
Makes you think twice, that's for sure. Okay, so we've got the U.S. on a regulatory roller coaster, the EU and UK trying to find some harmony. and a whole lot of different approaches in between.
Mhm.
What other notable stops are there on this crypto world tour?
Well, let's jet over to the Middle East, shall we? Fascinating region right now. The UAE is going all in on becoming a global crypto hub. Dubai, especially, is leading the charge.
Yeah, they even created the world's first crypto-specific regulator, VRA.
You got it.
Yeah.
They're really embracing the whole blockchain thing, making it very business friendly. The FATF even took them off their gray list recently. That's a list of countries that need more monitoring.
A gold star for the UAE. But are their neighbors just as gung-ho about crypto?
Not quite. The UAE is definitely sprinting ahead, while others are taking a more wait-and-see approach. Take Qatar, for example. They just launched their first digital asset framework, which is a step in the right direction, sure, but they still have that ban on crypto trading in place.
Wait, seriously? If they want to encourage innovation, that seems kind of counterproductive.
It does, doesn't it? But you have to remember, every country's got its own set of priorities. For Qatar, maybe it's about maintaining that tight control over their financial system, preventing capital flight, that sort of thing.
Makes sense. It's all about finding that balance, right? Speaking of which, what about Turkey? They've had a wild ride economically. Where do they stand on crypto?
Turkey's an interesting one. They're trying to do this balancing act, promoting crypto, but also trying to stay on the FATF's good side. See, they're on that gray list, and that makes it harder to participate in the global financial system. So they passed a new law to regulate virtual asset service providers, essentially bringing crypto businesses under their control.
So try and play by the rules, but still keep crypto in the game? That's going to be tough.
It is, and it highlights the influence of organizations like the FATF. Their mission to bring crypto under the umbrella of traditional finance is having a huge impact around the world.
It really is fascinating how much influence these international organizations have. But it's not just about individual countries, right? It's about these global players trying to shape the whole playing field. Speaking of different approaches, let's jump over to the Asia-Pacific region. Things get even more interesting over there.
They do, don't they? Lots of different dynamics at play. Let's talk about Hong Kong for a second. They've been making headlines lately, aiming to become a major crypto hub.
Yeah, they're not just talking the talk. It seems like they're walking the walk, too.
Absolutely. They've actually put a new licensing regime into place for virtual asset trading platforms. So any crypto business operating there needs to be licensed by their Securities and Futures Commission, the SFC.
So it's kind of like what the US and UK are doing with registering exchanges?
Yeah, you could say that. But there's a bit more of a proactive, welcoming vibe, I'd say. They're not just trying to keep crypto in check. They're actively trying to help it grow. They're even working on the sandbox environment, Project Ensemble, specifically for testing out stablecoin innovations.
A sandbox, like for kids. But instead of buckets and shovels, it's financial regulations.
Exactly. It's a controlled space where companies can experiment with new products and services without the risk of getting slapped with a regulatory hammer right away. Gives regulators a chance to get comfy with these new technologies and business models while fostering innovation.
That's clever. That sounds like Hong Kong's really serious about making this work.
Mhm.
But what about their neighbor, China? They're known for keeping a pretty tight leash on their financial system.
China's a fascinating case study for sure. It's more nuanced than simply saying they're anti-crypto. While they've put the kibosh on crypto trading and mining, just holding crypto, that's still allowed within their borders.
Wait, really? So owning it is fine, but using it is where they draw the line. How do they even enforce that?
Yeah, it definitely creates its own set of challenges. It seems like they're trying to walk this tightrope of controlling how crypto is used within their borders while acknowledging that they can't exactly isolate themselves from this global wave. There are even whispers that they're developing their own central bank digital currency, a CBDC.
So control with a side of digital yuan. Sounds about right.
It's all about finding that balance, right? Maintaining control, but not getting left behind as the world goes digital.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got Hong Kong riding the wave, China trying to control the tide. Who else is making waves in the Asia-Pacific region?
We can't forget about Singapore. They've always been a financial powerhouse, a bit of a fintech darling.
Oh, absolutely. They're always ahead of the curve when it comes to financial innovation. What's their take on all of this?
They've been quietly building up a pretty solid regulatory framework for a while now. They've got the Payment Services Act, which covers digital payments and includes specific rules for crypto exchanges. AML-CFT compliance, that's a big one for them too, just like a lot of places we've talked about.
So they're not shouting their crypto love from the rooftops like Hong Kong,
Right.
but they're laying down the groundwork to create a stable regulatory environment.
Precisely. They're all about fostering a well-regulated space that attracts legitimate businesses and minimizes risk. It's a more conservative approach, but it seems to be working for them.
It's like they're saying, crypto's welcome here, but we're doing things our way.
Exactly. And that seems to be a recurring theme, isn't it? Different countries, different priorities, different approaches. There's no magic formula for crypto regulation.
It's like this giant global experiment unfolding right before our eyes. Now, we've bounced around the globe quite a bit, but there's one more place I want to hit before we wrap things up. Australia.
Yes. Land of sunshine, surfing, and, well, surprisingly slow progress on the crypto regulation front, especially considering they have one of the highest rates of crypto ownership in the world.
Wait, seriously, how high are we talking?
Over 30% of Australians own crypto. Can you believe that?
Wow. You'd think with that kind of adoption rate, they'd be leading the charge on regulations.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But they're taking their time, maybe seeing how things play out elsewhere. They are planning to roll out some regulations for stablecoins by the end of next year, though.
Okay, so some movement, but definitely not rushing into anything. Anything else noteworthy about Australia's approach?
Well, here's a fun fact for you. In Australia, crypto is actually considered property for tax purposes.
Wait, what? Seriously, you mean like a house or a car? That's definitely different.
It is, and that, of course, has implications for how capital gains are taxed on crypto, which is something to keep in mind for any Aussies listening in.
Good to know. So after this whirlwind tour of global crypto regulations from the US to Australia and everywhere in between, what's the bottom line? What's the key takeaway here?
I think the main takeaway is that crypto is here to stay. Governments around the world are finally accepting that this isn't just some fad that's going to disappear, and they're actively trying to figure out how to regulate it.
Okay, but is that a good thing? I mean, more regulation could mean more restrictions, right?
It could, yeah, but it doesn't have to. Think of it this way. Regulation, or even just the attempts at regulation, lends a sense of legitimacy to the crypto space. It signals to institutional investors, businesses, and everyday people that crypto is a serious asset class, something worth investing in and building on.
So less Wild West, more Wall Street.
Exactly, and that could lead to wider adoption, more innovation, and ultimately a more mature and stable crypto market overall.
That makes sense. But you mentioned something earlier that's been sticking with me, the FATS and their whole push for more control over peer-to-peer transactions. Doesn't that kind of go against the whole decentralized spirit of crypto?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's a valid concern. Crypto at its heart is about decentralization, about cutting out the middlemen in financial transactions. If the FATF gets their way and every single transaction has to be tracked and controlled, it could really undermine that fundamental value proposition.
Right. It's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. You can force it, but it's not going to be pretty.
Exactly. So the future of crypto regulation really boils down to this tension. Can we strike that balance between protecting consumers and maintaining financial stability while still allowing for innovation and decentralization?
That's a tough needle to thread, and the stakes are pretty high.
They really are. The decisions made by regulators in the next few years will have a ripple effect for decades to come. And it's not just about the tech itself, it's about ideology too. Are we moving towards a more open, decentralized financial system, or are we just rebuilding the old one on a new foundation?
Well, now we're getting philosophical. But you're right, this isn't just about ones and zeros. It's about freedom, control, and how we interact with money and value in the future. No pressure, regulators.
No pressure at all. But seriously, this deep dive has given us a lot to chew on. We've seen how governments around the world are tackling these challenges of regulating crypto, and we've seen a whole spectrum of approaches and potential outcomes.
From embracing the chaos to trying to contain it and everything in between.
Precisely. But for you, our listener, the biggest takeaway is this. Stay informed. Keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the regulatory landscape, both globally and in your own backyard. Because ultimately, it's going to impact how you can access, use, and benefit from this amazing technology.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, that's for sure. So it seems like this whole global crypto regulatory landscape is kind of like, I don't know, a patchwork quilt. Every country's got its own little square, its own approach.
I like that. A patchwork quilt. Some patches are definitely more intricately woven than others. And those colors, still changing by the day.
And don't forget the thread. That
Yeah.
FATF thread, it's like it's weaving its way through the whole thing, trying to hold it all together.
Yeah, definitely something to watch out for. But I think that's part of what makes this whole space so fascinating, right? It's like this huge global experiment playing out in real time. We're witnessing the evolution of finance and technology right before our very eyes.
Absolutely. It's a wild ride, but hey, somebody's got to be along for it. And we're here to help you navigate all the twists and turns. From the SEC doing their regulatory two-step to the UAE building their crypto oasis, from China's digital walls to Australia's, shall we say, relaxed approach to crypto taxes.
Oh, and don't forget the EU's grand vision for a unified crypto market. It's a lot to process, but hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the key players, the big trends, and those burning questions that are shaping the future of crypto regulation.
We've definitely covered a ton of ground today, but let's be real. We've only just scratched the surface. There's always more to explore, and we encourage you to do just that.
Absolutely. If you're ready to dive even deeper, we highly recommend checking out the full video and the report from Elliptic. We'll link it up in the show notes for you. It's got a ton of great insights and analysis, much more than we had time to get into today.
So as we wrap things up here, we're left with the big question. What does the future hold for crypto regulation? Which models will win out? Will we see more countries getting on the same page, or will things become even more fragmented?
Those are questions for another deep dive, my friend. But one thing is for sure, this conversation, it's far from over.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the ever-evolving, always interesting world of global crypto regulation. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Deep Dive.